If you are over 60 and eggs are a regular part of your breakfast, there is something important you should know. Eggs themselves are not automatically dangerous, and for many people they can be a nutritious source of protein and other nutrients. But the way you buy, store, handle, cook, and serve them can make a real difference. Think about a typical morning. You take eggs from the refrigerator, crack them into a pan, cook them until they look done, and sit down to eat. It seems completely ordinary. But what if one small habit in that routine is increasing your risk of foodborne illness? The good news is that these mistakes are usually easy to correct. You do not need to panic, and you do not necessarily need to stop eating eggs. You simply need to know what to watch for. In this video, we are going through 7 common egg mistakes that become especially important as we get older. Some involve cooking, others happen before the egg ever reaches your plate. And the final mistake is one that many people make because they trust what they can see or smell. So stay with me, because once you understand these simple habits, your everyday egg breakfast can become much safer. There is a reason food safety deserves a little more attention after 60. Foodborne illness can affect anyone, but older adults are more likely to experience serious complications from certain infections. As we age, parts of the immune system can become less responsive, meaning the body may not fight some infections as efficiently as it did when we were younger. Imagine your immune system as a security team protecting a building. When you are younger, that team may respond quickly when something suspicious appears. With age, the response can become slower or less effective. That does not mean your body is weak. It simply means prevention becomes more valuable. A foodborne infection that causes a few unpleasant symptoms in one person can sometimes become much more serious in an older adult. This is why simple habits, such as proper refrigeration and thorough cooking, matter. The goal is not to create fear around food. In fact, quite the opposite. Knowing how to handle food safely gives you more freedom and confidence. You can continue enjoying foods you like while reducing avoidable risks. And eggs are a perfect example. They can fit into a healthy eating pattern, but safety depends on what happens from the refrigerator to the plate. So, let's start with a mistake that happens before you even turn on the stove: storing your eggs incorrectly. The first mistake is using eggs that have been stored improperly. Many people think that if an egg is still inside its shell, it is automatically protected from everything. The shell does provide a natural barrier, but it does not make the egg immune to contamination or temperature-related problems. Proper refrigeration is important because cold temperatures slow the growth of many harmful bacteria. Think of refrigeration as pressing a pause button. It does not make food safe forever, but it slows down processes that can make food unsafe more quickly. This is why you should follow the storage instructions on the package and keep eggs properly refrigerated. Avoid leaving them sitting on the kitchen counter for long periods, especially during warm weather. Another common habit is moving eggs around unnecessarily or keeping them in places where temperatures fluctuate. The refrigerator is generally the better environment. And there is another important point. Never assume that an egg is safe simply because it looks normal. Harmful bacteria may not change the color, smell, or appearance of food. If you have ever looked at an egg and thought, "It smells fine, so it must be fine," remember that your senses are not a laboratory test. Safe storage practices are much more reliable. This may sound simple, but small habits repeated every day can make a meaningful difference. And now we come to the second mistake, one that has become especially common because many people enjoy soft, runny, or partially cooked eggs. The second mistake is regularly eating raw or undercooked eggs without considering the potential risk. Maybe you like a yolk that is still very runny. Maybe you enjoy a homemade recipe that contains raw egg. Or perhaps you have simply cooked eggs this way for decades without ever having a problem. It is understandable, but the absence of a problem in the past does not mean the risk is zero in the future. Eggs can sometimes carry harmful bacteria, and cooking them thoroughly reduces that risk. This is particularly relevant for older adults because the consequences of a foodborne infection can be more serious. Now, this does not mean that every soft-looking egg is dangerous or that everyone who eats a runny yolk will become sick. Food safety is about reducing risk, not predicting exactly what will happen to one person. Many experts recommend that people at higher risk of serious foodborne illness avoid raw or undercooked eggs and choose eggs that are cooked until the whites and yolks are firm. Pasteurized egg products can also be an option for recipes that traditionally use raw or lightly cooked eggs. The important lesson is simple. freshness and safety are not the same thing. An egg can look fresh and still require proper cooking. So if you have been relying on appearance alone, this is a good habit to reconsider. But even when you cook your eggs properly, there's another problem that can happen in the kitchen. It has nothing to do with how long you cook the egg. It has to do with where your hands and utensils go afterward. The third mistake is cross-contamination. This sounds like a complicated medical term, but the idea is very simple. Cross-contamination means harmful bacteria can move from one food, surface, utensil, or pair of hands to another. Imagine invisible glitter. You touch something contaminated, then touch the refrigerator handle, your toast, a plate, or another utensil. You may not see anything, but you have potentially moved contamination from one place to another. Raw eggs deserve careful handling for this reason. After cracking or handling raw eggs, wash your hands properly with soap and water. Clean surfaces and utensils that have come into contact with raw egg. Do not place cooked food on a plate that previously held raw ingredients unless the plate has been washed, and avoid using the same utensil for raw and cooked food without cleaning it. This is especially important when preparing breakfast for several people. A person may crack eggs, stir them, touch a cabinet handle, pick up bread, and then continue cooking without thinking about it. None of these actions feels dangerous individually. The problem is that bacteria can travel through these small actions. The solution is not complicated. Keep raw and cooked foods separate, wash your hands, and clean surfaces after contact with raw eggs. These habits take only a little extra time, but they create an important layer of protection. And there is another mistake that often happens after the cooking is already finished. The fourth mistake is leaving cooked eggs or egg dishes sitting out for too long. Think about a family breakfast, a holiday gathering, or a weekend brunch. Someone makes scrambled eggs, places them on the table, and everyone talks while the food sits there. 30 minutes passes, then another 30. Eventually, the eggs are still sitting at room temperature because nobody wants to waste food. This is a situation worth taking seriously. Perishable cooked foods should not simply be left out for extended periods. Bacteria can multiply more quickly when food remains in temperatures that allow bacterial growth. That is why food safety guidance emphasizes prompt refrigeration of leftovers and appropriate handling of prepared foods. If you have cooked more eggs than you can eat, refrigerate the leftovers rather than letting them remain on the counter for hours. The same principle applies to egg-based dishes at gatherings. If food is being served for a long time, it needs appropriate temperature control, and when you reheat leftovers, heat them properly rather than repeatedly warming and cooling them. A useful question to ask yourself is this: how long has this food actually been sitting here? We often remember when we cook something but forget what happened afterward. That small question can interrupt an unsafe habit. But now we need to move beyond food safety, because there's another way a healthy egg breakfast can become less healthy: what you add to the eggs. The fifth mistake is turning eggs into an unhealthy meal by focusing only on the egg and ignoring everything around it. Eggs can provide high-quality protein and a variety of nutrients, but the overall meal still matters. Imagine 2 breakfasts. One includes eggs with vegetables and a sensible portion of whole grain food. Another includes eggs alongside large amounts of processed meat, heavily salted foods, refined carbohydrates, and very little produce. Both meals contain eggs, but their overall nutritional patterns are very different. This is why it is usually unhelpful to label one food as simply good or bad. Your health is influenced by your overall dietary pattern, portions, activity level, and individual needs. You may have heard people say, after 60, you should never eat eggs because they are unhealthy. That is an oversimplification. For many people, eggs can be included as part of a balanced diet. At the same time, someone with particular health concerns may need individualized advice about how eggs fit into their diet. The key is to look at the whole plate rather than blaming one ingredient. Add nutrient-rich foods when possible. Pay attention to excessive salt and heavily processed sides. And remember that healthy aging is not about finding one magical food. It is about building a pattern of choices that you can maintain over years. Still, there is one more mistake people make when thinking about eggs, and this one involves ignoring their own health circumstances. The sixth mistake is assuming that the same egg advice applies to everyone. Nutrition is personal. Your age matters, but so do your overall health, dietary pattern, medications, activity level, and any medical conditions you may have. One person may eat eggs regularly without concern, while another may need to discuss certain dietary choices with a healthcare professional. This is why internet advice that says everyone over 60 must stop eating eggs, or everyone over 60 should eat eggs every day, should be treated cautiously. Medicine rarely works through such universal rules. Think of your diet like a toolbox. Different people need different tools. The goal is not to throw away one tool because someone online said it was bad. The goal is to understand how that food fits into your particular situation. If your doctor has given you specific dietary guidance, follow that advice. If you have questions about cholesterol, heart health, diabetes, or another condition, ask your healthcare professional how eggs fit into your individual plan. And don't let fear-based headlines push you into unnecessary restrictions. Healthy aging requires balance. You want enough nutritious food, enough protein, plenty of variety, and sensible food safety habits. But there is still one final mistake that ties everything together. It is surprisingly simple, and it explains why you should never rely entirely on your senses to decide whether an egg is safe. The seventh mistake is trusting appearance or smell instead of following safe food practices. This is one of the most common misconceptions about food. People often say, "If it smells fine, I'll eat it," or "It looks normal, so it must be safe." Unfortunately, harmful bacteria do not always announce themselves with a strange smell, unusual color, or visible mold. Some contaminated foods can look perfectly ordinary. That means your eyes and nose cannot replace proper food safety practices. If an egg has been stored incorrectly, cooking it based on how fresh it looks is not a reliable solution. If cooked eggs have been left out for too long, smelling them does not magically tell you whether they are safe. And if raw egg has contaminated a surface, you may not see anything at all. This is why prevention is so powerful. Rather than trying to detect danger after the fact, use habits that reduce the opportunity for contamination in the first place. Store eggs properly. Handle raw eggs carefully. Wash your hands and kitchen surfaces. Cook eggs appropriately. Refrigerate leftovers promptly. And when you are unsure about the safety of a food, it is generally better to follow established food safety guidance than to rely on a smell test. The good news is that none of these habits requires expensive equipment or a complicated routine. They simply require consistency. So what does a safer egg routine look like after 60? It can be surprisingly simple. Start when you buy the eggs. Choose eggs from a reliable source and pay attention to the package information. Once you bring them home, store them properly according to food safety guidance. When you are ready to cook, wash your hands after handling raw eggs and keep raw ingredients away from cooked foods. Cook eggs appropriately rather than taking unnecessary risks with raw or undercooked preparations. Once breakfast is finished, do not leave leftovers sitting on the counter for hours. Refrigerate them promptly and handle them safely when you are ready to eat them again. Then look at the bigger nutritional picture. Instead of asking, "Are eggs good or bad?" ask, "How does this entire meal fit into my diet?" That question is much more useful. You can remember the routine with 6 simple ideas. Buy safely, store properly, handle carefully, cook appropriately, serve sensibly, and refrigerate leftovers. These are not complicated medical interventions. They are everyday habits, and that is exactly why they are so valuable. Prevention often comes down to small decisions repeated consistently. You do not need perfection, you need awareness. Let's quickly bring everything together. The first mistake was storing eggs improperly. The second was regularly eating raw or undercooked eggs without considering the added risk. The third was allowing cross-contamination between raw eggs, hands, utensils, and surfaces. The fourth was leaving cooked eggs out too long. The fifth was turning eggs into an unhealthy meal by ignoring the rest of the plate. The sixth was assuming that one rule applies to every person, regardless of their health needs. And the seventh was trusting smell or appearance instead of established food safety practices. Notice something important. None of these lessons says you have to fear eggs. In fact, the message is almost the opposite. Eggs can be a nutritious and convenient food for many people. The goal is to enjoy them more safely and thoughtfully. If you are over 60, small kitchen habits can become an important part of protecting your health. And if you prepare meals for an older parent, spouse, or family member, these are simple habits worth sharing. Now, I'd love to know, which of these 7 egg mistakes surprised you the most, and how do you usually prepare your eggs? Share your answer in the comments. And if you found this information useful, consider subscribing for more practical, evidence-aware healthy aging videos.